Having kept you in suspense, we are talking about Title IX, which, as many of you will know, the Obama administration used aggressively to drive schools and colleges across the country to address sexual assault and the rights of transgender students, which, depending on your point of view, has been either a huge step forward for the rights of women, for the rights of transgender students, or has been a disaster of executive overreach and federal meddling in issues that are best left to schools and local districts. Wherever you fall on that, that was then, this is now, we're in a new world, and so the questions before us today are, how might Title IX fare with the changing of the guard in Washington? And how should schools go about combating sexual assault and protecting the rights of all their students while upholding principles of legal fairness? We've got a great panel to discuss this, and I'll give you just a tiny bit of background so you know where our panelists are coming from. Dennis Cariello, who is now in private practice, but was an attorney at the Education Department and in the Office of Civil Rights, so welcome to you. Stuart Taylor, contributing editor at the National Journal and the author of a new book which takes on a lot of these issues called The Campus Rape Frenzy. And then joining us via Skype, welcome to you, Max McGee. Joining from sunny California, we are jealous, Max McGee, Superintendent of Palo Alto School District. Let me start with just the open, basic question. How might Title IX policy shift under a Trump administration? Do we have indications yet of where it's going to go? Dennis.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me to come here. I don't think Title IX is going to shift nearly as much as people think. Title IX is not going away. We'll start with that. I think what you're going to see is some sort of public process to try to merit out how we can best operationalize the very legitimate concerns that Title IX seeks to protect for schools. I think we're likely also to see OCR reconsider how it does its investigations, because right now it's got I think it's 300 or so open investigations that they are it's a laborious process for them. They're just taking too long. And I think that's where you're going to see some of this. I think you're going to see some calibration on certain aspects of this as universities and elementary and secondary institutions are able to come forward and say, here's where our concerns are. But I don't see this as some dramatic change in Title IX policy.
You were telling me right before we came out, you're advising schools in private practice now. You were up in New York at a meeting last month and hearing lots of questions about where this is going to go. Was that your basic message? That
yeah, I think that's right.
It's not going to be a radical shift, you don't think?
I don't think so. I think what you're going to see is the process by which they determine what Title IX is going to mean. That's going to change, I think, and for the better. I think it's important to have public involvement. The Department of Education did that when they were looking at very similar issues under the Clery Act, and it was a good process. They actually achieved consensus on that rulemaking. So I'd like to see more of a public involvement, because the Department of Education can't do this from kind of a removed ivory tower. They've got to involve the people that are working this day to day, because there are too many questions that need to be answered if we're all to achieve fairness for students on campus.
Stuart, hop in here. How do you think Title IX might change in these next 3-4 years?
3 points. One, I differentiate between Title IX, which is a very good statute adopted in 1972 under Nixon, that basically says no sex discrimination in universities and colleges or other federally financed educational program. And that's all well and good. And then there's the Obama administration innovations, the marching orders they illegally, in my view, issued to colleges and universities in the name of enforcing Title IX, which basically amounted to a destruction of due process for all accused males, regardless of the innocence in such proceedings. So those are two very different things. The Trump administration, for which I have very little sympathy in general, I have a little hope that in this case they might basically revoke everything the Obama administration did, almost everything, maybe there was something good somewhere, since 2011 when they started with their orders to colleges, and substitute something much better which would be a proper notice and comment rulemaking proceeding. The Obama administration didn't bother with that. They issued their marching orders in the name of guidance. That finds, on the basis of the overwhelming evidence, that some of which is in our book, that this system has degenerated into systematic discrimination against males, who are 99% of the accused in campus proceedings on these matters. I don't know that they'll do that, but I hope they will. I also hope that they will say, if colleges want to adjudicate cases like this, and there's nothing in the law that says they have to, if they want to, they can only do it by respecting the due process rights of males and females, accused and accusers alike, and that would involve a specified series of procedures to ensure fairness.
So your hope is that all the Obama-era guidance to do with Title IX will be rescinded. We've already seen it in the case of the transgender, the so-called bathroom bill debate.
Yeah, and I'm not really talking about that. I'll talk about it if you want me to. I'm hoping they'll do that, but I don't think they won't stop there, because that wouldn't undo much of the damage. I'm hoping they will affirmatively require colleges not only to disregard what they've been doing under Obama, but to follow specified due process procedures to ensure fairness to accused and accusers alike.
Okay. Max McGee, weigh in you have a front seat on this debate in California, where you're superintendent at Palo Alto. Do you have any insight? What's your gut instinct as to where Title IX and the guidance that applies to school districts like yours might go under the Trump administration?
I certainly don't know where it's going, but I hope it does not change. And this is kind of a tough one for me. I actually inherited cases that happened 3 or 4 years ago, actually before I became superintendent in Palo Alto. But it was important. It's important for us now to deal with those cases where we just signed a resolution agreement. Some members in our community urged us to postpone signing this in the hopes that OCR would change their rules and things would relax under the Trump administration. I want to put students first here. And this is about setting a culture that's safe for all students. It's about adults being models for students. And frankly, I have absolutely no issues with Obama's rulings, functions, and I think it's been better for our kids here and better for kids across the nation because of it.
Well, let me stay with you a minute. You mentioned you inherited some problems, and you came into Palo Alto in 2014. Is that right?
That's correct.
And there were already open investigations from the Office of Civil Rights underway. There had been much publicity about the rape culture, which was a term your students were using in the district already.
Yep.
Stay with this because the issues have been ongoing. As you know, last month, the Department of Education sent out a new letter, and the findings were that your school district has failed to promptly investigate sexual harassment and assault, and thus remains in violation of Title IX. What's your reaction to those findings?
Well, first of all, I think that had we done things right 4 years ago and followed through with the investigation, provided proper notification, we certainly wouldn't be in the place where we are now. So I think it is important to go through these investigations, and it's costly. I mean, we're working now with independent legal investigators. You know, we were trying to do this in-house, and even my first couple of years here, we tried to do this with our own in-house staff who are trained Title IX investigators, but frankly, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the time to do their job, so we are now spending some significant money for outside investigators. But again, I think every nickel in the long run is worth it, because frankly, it helps our young men to grow up to be young men, and it helps our young women understand. So again, I just think it's, I have no regrets about the money we're spending on this, and I think it's important.
If I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you welcome the federal intervention that has taken place under Title IX, despite the fact that it's finding your district repeatedly in violation.
Well, I'll tell you, I would rather be in complete compliance, and we have a very cooperative relationship now with OCR. You know, my frankly whole life, starting back when I worked with kids from Harlem back in the late '60s, has been about opportunity and access and civil rights. And students need to be in schools where they are safe, where they're welcome, where their identity is safe. We have a lighthouse policy here for our LGBTQ kids, and eager to share it across the country. And I'm eager to share what we learned from these Title IX investigations. Frankly, I think it is I have kids, I have 4 grandkids, and do I want my granddaughters in a situation where they have to worry? Do I want my grandson, who is the light of my life, to think it's okay to harass or tease or make inappropriate comments with young women? Absolutely not. So I do welcome the investigation, and I think that if we can share what we learn with others, we will have done a great service to our state, our region, and across the country.
We've obviously got a diversity of opinion on this panel, and I want to tease some of that out.
I'm sure we do.
One way of doing that is just trying to put some hard numbers on this. I mean, how do we measure what the impact of the Title IX enforcement guidance has been from the Obama administration? Can we say whether it's reduced the number of sexual assaults, the likelihood of sexual assault on campus, Dennis?
So, respectfully, I don't think that's the right question. I think what we heard just a moment ago is what we should be looking at as a formulation for success. There's no way where, as attractive as it is, and as a parent, I have 3 girls, and so if there was some university that could publicize, we have no incidents of sexual harassment and assault, it's all unicorns and rainbows, that would be great, and that would be a real choice university.
But we're in the real world.
Yeah, and I think what we just heard is exactly what we should be looking for as a model for success. Is, have we created an environment where students, again, this applies to men and women of all sexual orientations, do they feel comfortable coming forward and saying, this happened to me, and let's address it? Do we have adequate training to say that certain things are just not acceptable? Have we created an environment of mutual respect, and where the administration cares about this at least as equal regard, and in fact looks at as a measure of them being a successful university and as the brand that they're putting forward?
But I think that's
a better
what I'm
measure of
driving
success.
at, is whether Title IX is there any way to measure whether it's actually doing that? I mean, this Title IX is, as we were talking about before we came out, when I was a kid, Title IX was about having equal funding for the girls' lacrosse and the boys' lacrosse team. This is pushing it in a radical direction. Can we say whether it's worked? Has it helped to do what it set out to do? Stuart?
I don't think we can be confident, but Vice President Joe Biden, who's a big supporter of the Obama policy, for one, has implicitly admitted that it has not reduced the incidence of sexual assault on campus at all. The way in which he did that was in an early January statement in which he said, well, the rate of assault on campus was 1 in 5 women were sexually assaulted while on campus in the 90s. And today, he said, the number is exactly the same. Well, if the number is exactly the same, then the number has not gone down, the percentage. In fact, the 1 in 5 statistics is nonsense, supported by surveys that are highly misleading, if not fraudulent. The best federal surveys by the Bureau of Justice Statistics find that roughly 1 in 100 women in college is raped, and another 2 in 100 subjected to lesser sexual assaults. That's way too many, but it's a tiny fraction of the number that's kicked around so much. And I think the biggest impact of this policy, other than spreading a lot of fear on campus among a lot of people, especially in the free speech zone, as you mentioned, is in our book we detail 40 to 50 cases in which young men who were either certainly or probably innocent were railroaded out of college based on invalid claims of sexual assault. It wasn't always that the woman made something up. Often the facts are as follows. We had sex, I was drunk, he was drunk. Based on facts like that, the colleges typically will find the male guilty of rape and expel him.
I'm going to open it up to questions in a minute because I know you have a lot. Max McGee, let me let you look like you would like to respond to that last point, so let me let you get in there.
Wow. You know, I don't even know where to start. I mean, you know, holy cow! This is, you know, we have our students actually. Our student magazine just did a cover about the OCR cases. Our students talk about it. It matters to them. It has changed the culture. It is changing the culture, and it needs to change the culture in America and on our campuses. And you know, frankly, that's a reason that I'm kind of pleased that they're looking at high schools now, because the fact that these things happen in college, they have to start in middle school and high school. So I respectfully disagree, and I think it's a serious issue. And the more training we can provide for adults and for students, the more changes, more positive changes we'll see in our culture. And I'll tell you, the metric for me is not counting the numbers. It's hearing from the students. It's being interviewed by these kids, hearing from the students about how, you know, my school is a different place, hearing from the teachers about I appreciate the training. You know, it's about time. I hear this from the community. Good for you, too. We actually overrode an earlier resolution that you know, had some adversarial language in with the Office of Civil Rights, and passed a resolution about how we collaborate and cooperate with the Office for Civil Rights. And that sets a great example for our kids in so many different ways. And again, I think we need to put the students first in this conversation.
Well, I thank you for the respectful disagreement, and you all have raised important points about the changes in our society and in our culture which are playing out, and that there are limits to what one change in administration may be able to do as we go forward. I want to open it up. We have time for a couple of questions. If you have one, raise your hand. Oh, I've got a mic right here. If you wouldn't mind identifying yourself so we know who we're hearing from, that'd be great.
Hi. Thank you. I'm Miriam Tohill. I was sexually harassed on my way here today, and I am appalled to hear rape apologists on this panel of three white, cisgendered, I'm assuming straight men. Apologize to all of you if I'm making that false assumption. This is what causes rape and sexual harassment and sexual assault on campus. Men who insist that they know better than all of the women in this room, who I know all have experienced sexual harassment or have friends who have. So I want to ask from the one woman up here, how do you feel, and how do you see us moving forward from this moment where Atlantic saw this as the appropriate conversation to happen around Title IX?
That's a great question, and I thank you for it. I would say that as the one woman up here, I don't know that gives me a special privileged vantage point to weigh in. And I will, just to put a finer point on your question, say what I'm hearing up here is nobody on this panel who thinks that sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape should be ignored. There are significant differences on this panel, clearly, as you're hearing, in terms of how due process should play out and whether and to what extent the federal government should be involved in issues that are also obviously playing out on the forefronts of school districts. I know. I'm a journalist. I'm trained to see balance. I'm a woman. Every woman in this room has some experience with these issues. I'm not dodging your question, but I will say that I am glad to hear a frank airing of views up here on this stage, and I thank you for hearing them out and asking respectful questions. Dennis?
One point in defense of the Atlantic. So I am a substitute. My colleague who worked with me at the Office of Civil Rights, Debbie Osgood, who is a female, was supposed to be sitting here today. Unfortunately, she took very ill and asked me to sub in. So in the Atlantic's defense, the panel did have a woman on it.
I'll just quickly
In
add
addition
that
to our moderator.
I am saddened but not surprised to hear myself called a rape apologist for stating facts that have never been refuted.
Thank you. We have a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Anna Powell. I am a resident of DC and a former Palo Alto resident. So in the spirit of respectfully disagreeing, I would like to ask Superintendent McGee a question as we set aside the specter of false rape accusations. Could you speak to the interplay between Title IX issues and mental health, which I know has also been a serious challenge in the Palo Alto School District with clusters of suicides and other teen mental health issues? Thank you.
Well, again, I think we have three goals here: high quality teaching and learning, equity and access, and wellness and safety. And those are not enumerated; they're all equally important. And so I think the mental health and wellness is key. And the more that we have can assure that our students assure youth well-being. Frankly, the fewer problems we'll have among our students. The more training we can provide for teachers in attending to the social emotional needs of our students and frankly to each other as well, the fewer issues that we'll have, the fewer Title IX harassment, sexual harassment type issues we'll have. So yeah, Anna, they are, I think, closely interrelated. And again, part of the issue here is a culture, a highly affluent, highly successful, hyper competitive culture, and the kids will tell you that as well. And so, what we're trying to do is create this balance, and it takes time. But again, with the training, with the support of our board, and frankly, I think our larger community, we're making a difference.
We are out of time, but I do want to give you all just a very quick rapid fire sum up question, because this is a discussion I feel like we could carry on for a couple hours up here. And my question has to do with this, that setting aside what happens with Title IX, setting aside how the Trump administration education department decides to proceed, there are other actions underway. We saw just, I believe on Friday, a group of 8 senators, bipartisan, Republican, Democrats, introducing a bill, the Campus Accountability and Safety Act, the goal of which is to combat sexual assault, and it requires colleges to publish their statistics, crime statistics, make confidential advisors available, a whole raft of other measures. My point being, just quickly, I wonder, are there other things going on this landscape that give each of you hope that we are making progress, regardless of what the White House and the Education Department are up to in the coming days? Max McGee? Quick answer.
Well, I think just a general awareness. Again, I think it needs to start back at middle school and high school, and because these are the kids that are up on the college campuses. So yeah, I am encouraged by these efforts, and frankly hope that they find their way down into our high schools for sure.
Thank you. Stuart?
My hope, which would not be the same as everyone else's here, obviously, is that more and more eminent civil libertarians and journalists, every civil libertarian I can think of who I take seriously on this issue, journalists and civil libertarians including Kathy Young, Emily Yaffe, Christina Hoff Summers, Laura Kipnis, who's in the Wall Street Journal today, are taking more or less the same position that I take on this issue. And so it doesn't have to be a male-female divide on how these things are interpreted. The most eloquent people on my side of the argument, many of them are women.
Thank you. Dennis, you get the last word.
Great. And thank you again for having me here. I think I do have a lot of hope because irrespective of what happens with the law, I mean, I look at the way, at least my clients, and I work mostly with universities, the way they have changed over the last, 6 or 7 years now, and this is part of their culture, and it's not something that is going away. And I think that respect that Title IX and the Dear Colleague in 2011 was an attempt to engender has pervaded. There's more to be done, absolutely, but I don't think that no matter what happens, I don't think it's changing. And a bipartisan effort, like you cited, is even more proof of that.
Dennis, Stuart, Max, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much.